So about the topic of today's video, I did a lot of welding on my cage, and yeah, there were some incidents. So during the welding of the Jeep, or on the Jeep, I was using some flame resistant blankets. I had a couple of welding blankets I had, but they weren't really big enough, and so I had some flame resistant blankets, some moving blankets that were made out of some kind of canvas that I put in the in the Jeep to protect some of the seats. That was a little bit away from where the sparks were flying, but that did not keep some hot embers and some flames from getting started. So I had to quickly rip the blanket out and put it out. It was flaming up pretty good. So for a second, if I hadn't been paying attention, I'd have had a bad day, and my Jeep would have been even blacker. Would have been charred to a crisp. But there was no actual damage, just a little bit of hole in the blanket, and that's kind of where we're at, and why I have the topic of the video what I have it. Hey Bella, what you got there? You don't want that? What do you want, buddy? Come here. Good girl. Morning, Josie. What are you doing, huh? What are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? Now, the bad part is that I did not get video of the fire or the very small flame. There is a time-lapse video about 3/4 into this video of me working on the Jeep. You'll see some sparks and stuff. And I did have the Jeep fully covered, and it was nice, but I didn't get the excitement on film. So too bad, but I didn't burn down my Jeep. I just almost did. Ladies and gentlemen, in the spirit of trying to finish this build, I'm going to power through today, even though it is 55 degrees and windy, very windy, which I know for a lot of y'all that's not very cold, but for us in Georgia, that's pretty chilly. Luckily the sun's out, so it doesn't feel that cool. But I got to finish the cage today, try to anyway. I've got to make the sleeves that will go from here to there and weld on to the main hoop, and I've got to tack this into place, put some welding blankets around that, and go ahead and weld that. Obviously the easiest way to have done this would have been to get it in place like it is now, put a couple tacks over here, and then unbolt the 2 bolts on each side of the main hoop and the 2 bolts on each side of the back, and lift the whole thing out of the Jeep, finish welding it in the garage, come back out and reinstall it. I'm doing this by myself, trying to prove a point that even one person can do things like this. Maybe not as good as they could be done, but that it is able to do in your own garage on your own time. So I'm doing it by myself, and if anyone's ever lifted one of those cages by themselves, they're very heavy, especially now that I've got all the front pieces on. I risk of damaging my Jeep, messing stuff up. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to simply make sure this is protected with welding blankets or wool blankets, and go ahead and weld it here. I'll lay the windshield back down, and then I'll take this padding off and grind that down to get some fresh metal and weld that and put some blankets over the seats and everything. Shouldn't be a big deal. If it is, then we'll figure out a different way to do it, but I don't think it will be. So the first thing I had to do was figure out how I'm going to do the sleeve. A 2-inch 1/8 wall tube should sleeve that perfectly. In the spirit of keeping this build as cheap as possible and also being as lazy as possible, I'll kind of show you what I've decided to do. Okay, so this is the original cross piece that went between the 2 sides on the main hoop. I measured it, and it just happens to be 2-inch 1/8 wall. So I'm going to cut it up, and that's what I'm going to use to get my sleeves, instead of going to the steel supply place here in town and getting some 2-inch 1/8 wall DOM. This is likely DOM, might be, haven't really looked at it to tell, but it's probably DOM anyway. And so I'll just cut this end off and then cut this in the lengths I need to sleeve that with. And then we'll see how that works. If it winds up not working, then I'll run to town and get some actual 2-inch DOM. But I'm pretty sure this is going to work. It's going to be free, and I won't need this piece anymore anyway. It'll just be taking up space in the garage, so might as well put it to good use. So let me take the top down, put the windshield down, and get all that ready. Do some measurements, and I'll be back in a minute. All right, guys. So after measuring again, before I started really trying to put stuff together, I realized that center section is actually 2.5 inch, which obviously ain't gonna work. 2.5/8 wall, that would be a 1/4 inch too big, and it's just not gonna work. Luckily, I caught that before I started really getting into it. So now we're on the way to the steel supply shop to see if they have any 2-inch/8 wall. If they do, then I'm gonna buy some and we'll get back to it. If they don't, then I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. I will see if they have some plate steel as well, and I might buy the steel to go ahead and make the rocker guards. So we'll try to do something today. That's if they're open. Now it's Saturday. Sometimes they're not open on Saturday. So if they're not, then we'll come back and watch the Georgia game. That's not my goal for the day because Georgia's playing a nobody. So let's see what happens, and we'll be right back. That worked out perfect. Well, almost perfect. I got the plate for the rocker guards. So all the plate I needed, I basically got 10 foot of 6-inch/8 wall and 10 foot of 2-inch 3/16 for $23. So just ridiculously cheap. Steel prices have gone through the floor. And that was including it getting cut in half, so they charge you for cuts as well. But and then I almost didn't get the DOM to finish the cage because they did not have 2-inch/8 wall. So I hauled around there while he was cutting the other and decided to stop being an idiot and realized that I don't really care about the wall thickness. I just need the inside diameter of 1 3/4 inches. So they did have some 2 1/4 quarter wall, which is perfect inside diameter. So I got a foot of that, and luckily it was a scrap piece, so they sold by the foot. This place typically sells 10 foot minimum. So that was another $8. So I got out of there for right $30, and I got a boatload of steel to finish the project with. So back home we go with a we'll be back at the Jeep here shortly, and we will start cutting more steel and wrecking my garage even further. So this is what I was talking about coming back from the steel. So see, this is quarter wall. Obviously I was going to try to get 1/8 wall, but they didn't have it. But so here we are. We've got it sleeved. I've still got to grind this to an angle to fit that. And then I'll grind this paint off right here so I can weld to this, kind of like this is right here. You can see it sleeved on there perfectly. Realistically, once I get everything painted, you'll never be able to tell that there's even a sleeve there. I mean, obviously if you're looking for it, you would, but no one's going to look for that. Hold on. And this was a foot piece I got for $8, and I just cut it with an angle grinder on this side, and you can see it's a really clean cut. So I'm gonna go back and use a grinding wheel to get that to the right angle. And what I'll do is I'll just bend it down, test fit it, pull it back up, grind some, down, test fit, grind, and back up. This is the other side, very similar. I cut this one with a Sawzall with a bimetal blade. It was obviously not nearly as clean of a cut. I don't know if you can tell, kind of bad lighting, but the angle grinder was much quicker with a cutting wheel. So I'm gonna go back and grind this one down too to match. You can see I got a gap over there, so I'll grind this down. I've got plenty of room to tap this back. I've got about 3 inches here, 3 to 4 inches. So I can tap this back and focus that if I need to, in order to get a good weld. Once I get that grinding done and get that fitted well, then all that's left is to weld that, weld this, and then go back and clean everything up, and then put a coat of gloss paint on there instead of this flat that's on this this front piece. And then I'll bolt everything back together, and that thing should be more or less done. And then we'll start on the rocker guards. Alright guys, I have welded a good bit. I got the fronts welded. I got my sleeve welded in. The only welding I still have to do is to connect this middle piece on both sides. I'll probably do that here in a second. That way I don't have to spend another day welding. That weld. Got these up here. I haven't, I'm welding outside, so I'm welding with flux. I have not cleaned any of the slag off or prettied them up. I scraped them a little bit just to see how good the welds were. And they're good. They're not the prettiest. I had awkward angles, and once again, outside flux core, it's just not going to produce the most beautiful welds, but very strong. I mean, obviously this ain't a 4,000 pound push, but thing's on there. Especially after I get that middle section welded in and get the base plates in. So that'll be the next section of the video, I guess, is to weld those middle parts and then put everything back together. And I'm gonna, I was hoping not to do it in a whole nother part, but this just took a long time today. So I'm going to have another part of me getting prepped for paint and then painting it. That'll be next weekend. So it'll be finished, and of course making those brackets at the bottom. That'll be next weekend, so it'll be done next weekend, but this is a nice little update. I'll take a little bit more video here in a second once I get everything buttoned up, and then we'll finish for today. Alright, so I decided not to weld that today because it's super cold and super windy out here, and I I'm ready to go in and get something to eat and relax. So I'm going to paint this up and get it all nice and get that welded next weekend. So that'll be done. I'll get my sound bar remounted. I'll kind of show y'all how to do that if you don't know. I'll get this up there. I'll get probably, I don't know what I'm going to do right here as far as padding, but we'll see. That's really where we're going to end it today. Guys, that's all for today. This has been a long day. So I will be finishing up the cage, and I did buy the metal for the rocker guards. So I'll be building those very soon too. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe if you want to see more, and like this video if you thought it was neat or it helped you out at all. I'm gonna get in while this wind is kicking.